cleaning the brushes and the palette is a straightforward process. I will start with my palette. So as you can see, I have colors all over it. Since this is oil paint and I work with it almost every day, I usually save my colors on my palette and I don't put them anywhere. If you weren't using your paints every day, you could scoop them into a plastic container that has a lid. And once you put your paints in the container, you can place the container in your freezer and it will stay fresh for a long time, especially if it's a small container with a small amount of air in it. Now I will scoop up first, that's the first step, some of my paints, and I set them aside. So this is something I will use soon. And so what you want is really scrape all your paints as much as you can off the palette, at least the part of the palette where you normally mix your colors. And then you'll need a piece of paper towel to clean your palette knife, and the container of clean solvent that we just cleaned. And you can use paper towel or you could use a cotton rag and just dip it into the solvent and wipe off the remainder of the paint from the palette. So this is really simple, really easy to do. And I will use one more. Now, as far as the brushes go, there are different methods to clean your brushes if you're an oil painter. I will show you the one that I use generally. And for that, I start with the solvent and the paper towel. I have two brushes here that are soiled because I use them. So I will first, this is the first step, try to squeeze out any excess paint from the brush before I do anything else. So I just squeeze it, and you can see there is some paint. And do the same thing with this larger brush. Just squeeze it out really good. You can see it still has plenty of paint in it that comes out. And this is important because this helps to keep your solvent clean longer. And now that I squeeze most of it out, I'm ready for the solvent. And one more note, the solvent that I scooped off the top of the container before I cleaned it, I will reuse that. That's why it's a good idea to let the paint pigment settle on the bottom, like overnight, and then you carefully skim off the clean part of the solvent, and then you can reuse that. So now the solvent, I will rinse my brushes, and try not to push your brush really down on the bottom and roughly move it, because that can damage the bristles. Rather try to do this up and down movement on the side of the container. And then once you are satisfied and you think most of the paint came out of the brush, then you take it and wipe it. And do the same thing with the other one. As you can see, I'm really carefully just doing it on the side of the container, not the bottom. And once I'm happy with it, again, I'm going to wipe it. Now, if let's say it's still paint today and continue painting, I would leave these brushes at this stage and I wouldn't clean them any further. However, if you are done for the day and you're done maybe for a few days, you're not going to use these brushes, I will show you what would be the next step to completely clean it and make sure there is no pigment residue in them. if there is paint pigment stay in a brush for a long time, over time it can dry, harden your brush, and then your brush is basically ruined unless you use a very harsh chemical to try to dilute or loosen up those old dried pigments. So it's better to, if you know you're not going to work with your brush for another few days, to completely clean it and store it correctly. So this is the next step that I will demonstrate what to do. Here is our next step to clean the brushes. So what you're gonna need is a bar soap. I like to use Ivory brand soap, and there you go. But you can use basically any brand soap. They also sell artist soaps if you like to spend more money. I think this works just as well. And all you need is lukewarm water, running water. And what you need to do is hold the soap under the water with the brush flat against the soap and start to make circular motions. And when you pull the soap out of the water, you can see how the pigment starts to come out of it. It's important that you don't push your brush in opposite direction of the bristles, because that would destroy the bristles, it would break them. So rather go flat against the surface and circular motions. And keep doing this until there is no pigment coming out of the brush. So it might take a few minutes, be patient. But once you, and then, because this is a larger brush, it will take a little bit to clean it. And a little more. And once you can see how I'm pressing it really, and sideways too. I like to turn it on the narrow side as well, and a couple more circles and a couple circles in the opposite direction. There is still some sludge coming out of the brush, but not nearly as much as it was at the beginning. So I just wash it out. I rinse it again to get all the foam, the soiled foam out. Do a couple more circles, a couple more flat strokes on the soap, and now it's pretty clean, as you can see it. So once you've done this part, rinse out the soap. Help with your fingers to squeeze it out of the brush. You can even make some circles on the palm of your hand. And then once that's done, just squeeze out the water as much as you can. Take your paper towel, do the same thing, squeeze out as much water as possible. And you could do two things at this point. You could just take the brush and wrap it into a piece of paper towel. And usually the way you would do it is hold the paper towel against the metal part of the brush and start to roll it up. And once you've done that, just squeeze it a little more and lay it on the surface flat. Let it dry overnight. Now if you want to do an extra step to preserve your brush longevity, make the brush last longer, what you can do is use either a brush conditioner. This one is called the Terpenoid Natural, or you could use a medium, like I like to use safflower oil. You could use, if you're using linseed oil for painting, you could use that, or you could even use a vegetable oil. So any of these would work. Open your jar of, well, this doesn't want to open, but yeah, the idea is to open your jar. I guess I'm gonna try with the other one because this doesn't want to open. And put some of your oil conditioner into your container, and just put your brush into the oil. Again, squeeze it out, and once you're done and you squeezed out most of the oil, then you can just either lay it down flat and let it dry, or do what I just demonstrated a minute ago, where you actually wrap it into a paper towel tightly and leave it like that until you use it again. This method will prolong the life of your oil brushes, and it will keep them clean and happy. I hope you enjoyed this video and found it to be useful.